Let's settle this once and for all. No era served up more edge-of-your-seat, high-noon showdowns than the 1940s. Forget polite duels or talk-it-out solutions. In these westerns, reputations lived and died under the blazing sun, right in front of a whole town, holding its breath. But which films packed the hardest punch when the clock struck 12? And which showdown left even the toughest gunslingers second-guessing themselves? Stick around, because some legends are forged by lead and settled in broad daylight. My Darling Clementine, 1946. If you want to see what it means to walk straight into hell with nothing but a six-shooter and pure nerve, look no further. John Ford's My Darling Clementine reimagines the OK Corral shootout with a slow burn tension that never lets up. Henry Fonda's Wyatt Earp moves through Tombstone like he's already carved his name in the sun. But when his brother is killed, he's all business, turning grief into raw, controlled vengeance. Ford turns the standoff into a dance of nerves, every footstep loaded, every bead of sweat another ticking second before chaos erupts. Linda Darnell, Victor Mature, and Walter Brennan heighten the suspense, making the high-noon showdown feel like Judgment Day. When bullets finally fly, it's over in a flash, but the shockwaves linger. The duel isn't about quick draws. It's about who can stare down fate the longest. This film didn't just raise the bar. It wrote the rules everyone else still tries to follow. If you want a showdown where silence screams and courage isn't loud, My Darling Clementine is your template. Red River, 1948. Not every showdown is about good versus evil. Sometimes it's about a son daring to challenge his father. Red River loads John Wayne and Montgomery Clift into a powder keg of family tension, rivalry, and a cattle drive that teeters on mutiny. Wayne's Tom Dunson is a force of nature, but Clift's Matt is just as stubborn, and their collision is inevitable. Howard Hawks builds up to the town center showdown like a master, the sun overhead, and a lifetime of bitterness in the air. When the fight finally breaks out, it's messy, real, and painful. Not a ballet, but an explosion of old wounds and new pride. There's no easy victory, only the courage to admit weakness wins the day. Red River isn't just a western, it's a family drama disguised as a gunfight, and it detonates under the harshest light possible. Duel in the Sun, 1946. If you want high noon to mean heartbreak, start here. Duel in the Sun is a scorcher. Jennifer Jones is Pearl Chavez, trapped between Gregory Peck's Wild Loot and Joseph Cotton's Steadier Jesse. Forget justice. This gunfight is a fever dream of doomed love and obsession. King Vidor shoots the climax like the West is literally on fire. Sun, sand, sweat, and bullets. When Pearl and Loot finally meet in the open, it's less a standoff and more a desperate last embrace with fate. The shootout is messy, emotional, and unforgettable. Chaos in slow motion, love and hate tangled up in gunsmoke. Critics called it overheated, but Martin Scorsese calls it iconic. Duel in the Sun doesn't follow the rules. It torches them, proving that sometimes the wildest showdowns are about passion, not justice. The Oxbow Incident, 1943. No pistols required. This is a psychological showdown. The Oxbow Incident puts Henry Fonda in the middle of a lynch mob where justice turns into mob rule under the midday sun. There's no score, no sweeping vistas, just hard questions and harder choices as three men stand accused and the whole town debates their fate. The tension builds like a vice. Every argument is a bullet, every pause a threat. Fonda's character begs for reason, but the mob is hungry, and the high-noon verdict leaves the town's soul in pieces. William Wellman's film is as relevant now as ever, showing that the ugliest showdowns sometimes leave no bodies, just scars. The Oxbow Incident is a warning about the price of rushing to judgment, and it still stings. Fort Apache, 1948. No pistols required. This is a psychological showdown. The Oxbow Incident puts Henry Fonda in the middle of a lynch mob, where justice turns into mob rule under the midday sun. There's no score, no sweeping vistas, just hard questions and harder choices as three men stand accused and the whole town debates their fate. The tension builds like a vice. Every argument is a bullet, every pause a threat. Fonda's character begs for reason, but the mob is hungry, and the high noon verdict leaves the town's soul in pieces. William Wellman's film is as relevant now as ever, showing that the ugliest showdowns sometimes leave no bodies, just scars. The Oxbow incident is a warning about the price of rushing to judgment, and it still stings. Pursued, 1947. Pursued brings high noon into the shadows, where the sun's glare is as relentless as the ghosts chasing Robert Mitchum's Jeb Rand. This isn't your classic Main Street standoff. It's a battle of wills, with family feuds and buried trauma waiting to erupt. Raoul Walsh uses noir style to crank up the tension. Harsh light, long shadows, and a sense of fate pressing down on every move. The final confrontation isn't in a crowded town, but on a lonely ranch, where Jeb faces his lifelong tormentor, Grant Callum, under the blistering sun. What unfolds isn't just a test of speed or aim. It's about courage, guilt, and whether anyone can escape the darkness of their past. Mitchum plays Jeb as wounded and wary, every step toward the showdown telegraphing pain and determination. When the guns finally go off, it's thunder in the canyon and heartbreak in every echo. Pursued proves that the scariest noon showdowns don't always take place in the open. They happen when the past catches up, and you have nowhere left to run. It's not about who's fastest, but who's brave enough to stand in the light, no matter what it reveals. Winchester 73, 1949. Winchester 73 turns a rifle into the West's deadliest prize, and everyone's after it. James Stewart's Lynn McAdam and Stephen McNally's Dutch Henry Brown chase each other across the frontier, but it all leads to a noon showdown on a sun-scorched ridge. Nothing to hide behind but old grudges. Director Anthony Mann lets the tension simmer until it boils over. When Lynn and Dutch face off, it's more than skill on the line. It's years of hate, betrayal, and heartbreak. The gun itself becomes a symbol, a curse that only ends when someone's willing to break the cycle. Stewart's performance is pure nerve, his sense of justice as sharp as his aim. The final shots ring out, the dust settles, and the legacy of violence hangs heavy in the air. Winchester 73 reminds us that the West was never just about land or gold. It was about pride, revenge, and scars that don't fade with the sun. Angel and the Bad Man, 1947. Sometimes the bravest move at high noon is not to draw at all. John Wayne's Quirt Evans arrives with a reputation for violence, but after a run-in with a Quaker family, everything changes. James Edward Grant directs with a gentle hand, but tension pulses beneath the calm. As the showdown approaches, Quirt's enemies expect the usual bloodbath, but Wayne flips the script, dropping his gun in broad daylight, refusing to fight. The streets are silent, the townsfolk tense, but this time, courage looks like restraint. Wayne's stoic energy transforms into vulnerability, turning a potential massacre into a lesson in mercy. When the gunmen finally lower their weapons, it's clear the true victory is over one's own demons. Angel and the Bad Man shows that not all high noon moments are about bullets. Sometimes they're about breaking the cycle of violence and daring to walk away. Blood on the Moon, 1948. Blood on the Moon proves the West's most dangerous hour doesn't always happen on Main Street. Robert Mitchum's Jim Gary is trapped in a land dispute gone bad. Betrayals, shifting alliances, and shadows sharper than any knife. Director Robert Wise delivers a showdown where sunlight and suspicion collide. The final face-off between Gary and Tate Reiling is tense. Every movement is loaded, every glance a potential shot. Mitchum brings bruised humanity to Gary, a man who's tired of running and even more tired of lies. The shootout is gritty and desperate, with loyalties shattering and trust evaporating in the harsh light. When the dust clears, you realize high noon isn't just about time. It's when everyone's true colors are forced into the open. Blood on the Moon is the cynic's Western. Sharp, messy, and honest about the cost of survival. Yellow Sky, 1948. When gold draws outlaws to a ghost town, it's not just greed at stake, it's everyone's soul. Gregory Peck's Stretch Dawson and his crew face off against Ann Baxter's fiercely independent Mike and her grandfather in Yellow Sky. William Wellman amps up the moral tension. Nobody trusts anyone, and the sun is a spotlight no one can escape. The final standoff isn't a neat duel. It's a desperate sun-blasted scramble for survival. Baxter's Mike isn't just holding her own. She's holding a gun, refusing to be sidelined. Alliances crumble, gold loses its shine, and when violence erupts, it's every person for themselves. When the dust settles, it's clear this showdown wasn't just about treasure. It was about who could stand tall when everything else collapsed. Yellow Sky exposes the raw nerves of human nature, showing that in the West, the sun always reveals what's been hiding in the shadows. Colorado Territory, 1949. Desperation is the name of the game in Colorado Territory. Joel McCrea's Wes McQueen is an outlaw whose dreams of one last big score turn into a sun-baked nightmare. Director Raoul Walsh ditches city noir for the Rocky Wilds, and every moment McQueen spends holed up with Virginia Mayo's Colorado Carson, the News Titans. As lawmen close in, noon brings the inevitable: betrayal, heartbreak, and a shootout among the cliffs. The sun's overhead, escape routes are blocked, and loyalty is tested until it snaps. The film doesn't pull punches. Every bullet is the price of a bad decision, and even love can't save you when the world wants your head. The final moments are a blaze of hopeless heroism as McQueen and Colorado face their fate side by side, doomed but defiant. Colorado Territory flips the script on outlaw fantasies, proving some showdowns are about dignity in the face of disaster, not riding off into the sunset, but holding your ground when there's nowhere left to run. The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, 1948. Greed, paranoia, and betrayal drive this showdown under the Mexican sun. Humphrey Bogart's Fred Dobbs, once a down-and-outer, is transformed by gold into a desperate, dangerous man. Director John Huston's The Treasure of the Sierra Madre isn't about quick draws. It's about slow, smoldering distrust that finally explodes. As bandits close in and the midday heat turns the desert into a pressure cooker, Dobbs is ready to shoot anyone, even his own partners. The real standoff isn't with outsiders, but within the group, as suspicion corrodes friendship. No heroes here, just men fighting for survival and sanity. By the time the gunsmoke clears, gold has cost them everything. The Treasure of the Sierra Madre is a reminder that sometimes the deadliest high noon is the one where you're staring down the people you thought you could trust. The Walking Hills, 1949. Out in the sand-blasted wasteland, you don't need a main street to stage a standoff. Just buried treasure, a pack of desperate men, and the sun beating down like a drum. The Walking Hills assembles an oddball group, prospectors, cowboys, and one tough woman, then tosses them into the desert with a rumor about lost gold. Suspicion flares, alliances crack, and soon enough, every man is eyeing his neighbor's holster. Director John Sturgis is a master of suspense, and he lets the landscape do half the work. The sand gets in your boots, the glare makes your eyes ache, and paranoia is thick as cactus. As tempers fray, the showdown isn't just about who's fastest, it's about who can keep it together, while everyone else falls apart. Randolph Scott leads with a cool head, but even he can't hold the group together when greed goes nuclear. The sun turns noon into an interrogation light, exposing every secret and every fear. The climax is messy as buried lies finally explode into violence. Guns blaze, friendships dissolve, and the desert swallows the losers without a trace. The Walking Hills is a reminder. In the West, you're never more than one bad day from disaster, and high noon is as much about surviving your own side as any outside threat. If you're not paranoid by the end, you weren't paying attention. The Outlaw, 1943. If you're looking for a showdown with attitude, The Outlaw delivers in spades. This Howard Hughes fever dream tosses out the rulebook and makes Billy the Kid, Jack Butel, the ultimate wild card. The film is all about tension, between Billy and Thomas Mitchell's Pat Garrett, between Billy and Walter Houston's Doc Holliday, and yes, between Billy and the sun itself, as he stares down his rivals with a smirk that says, "Try me." The setup is pure pulp. Everybody wants a piece of Billy, but he's always one step ahead, or one bullet quicker. Hughes milks the cat-and-mouse dynamic, setting up standoffs that simmer under the midday glare. There's always a sense that something's about to snap, whether it's a pistol or a partnership. And when the guns come out, it's never pretty. This isn't a gentleman's duel. It's survival by any means necessary. Jane Russell's Rio is caught in the middle, adding fuel to every fire, and the film isn't shy about ramping up the heat. The big showdown happens in the open, sun burning down, no shade and no second chances. The violence is sudden, the betrayal's brutal, and by the end, you're left wondering if Billy's the hero, the villain, or just the only one tough enough to survive. The Outlaw is Western mythos on overdrive, messy, loud, and absolutely unforgettable. Three Godfathers, 1948. Three outlaws, one dying woman, and a promise that can't be broken. John Ford's Three Godfathers might have the most unconventional high noon of all. John Wayne leads a trio of bank robbers fleeing across the desert, only to stumble across a pregnant woman, stranded and near death. Her dying wish? That they save her newborn at all costs. Suddenly the law isn't the only thing chasing them. Now it's their own sense of honor. Ford takes what could have been a simple shootout and turns it into a parable. The outlaws are forced to risk everything in the heat of the day, braving dehydration, sunstroke, and relentless pursuit. The final confrontation is as much with nature as with the posse on their heels. The noon sun becomes a crucible, burning away any pretense and forcing the men to decide. Do they live up to their promise or save themselves? The tension peaks as the trio stumbles into a ghost town, law closing in and death circling overhead. The real gunfight is inside, the battle for redemption. Wayne's performance is all grit and grace, and the final moments are as moving as any hail of bullets. Three Godfathers delivers a showdown where salvation, not victory, is the prize. In the West, sometimes the bravest thing you can do at high noon is put someone else first. Abilene Town, 1946. Classic westerns are built on Main Street showdowns, and Abilene Town goes straight for the jugular. Randolph Scott's Marshal, Dan Mitchell, is the calm at the eye of the storm, caught between stubborn cattlemen, anxious settlers, and a gang itching for violence. Director Edwin L. Marin sets the tension high, with townsfolk peering from windows as Mitchell faces the mob alone in the noon glare. This isn't just a test of his aim. It's a trial of his courage and the town's backbone. At first, Abilene is paralyzed by fear, but Mitchell's grit sparks a quiet revolution. One by one, citizens step out, shifting the odds. Gunfire is inevitable, but so is the awakening of a community. By the end, the town is reclaimed, not by force, but by solidarity. Abilene Town proves that sometimes the real power in a high noon showdown isn't who draws first, but who stands together when it counts. It's an ode to collective courage, where the West's harsh justice is finally tempered by unity. Gunfighters, 1947. Not every gunman wants a showdown, but sometimes the West just won't let you retire. Gunfighters gives us Randolph Scott as Brazos Kane, a man determined to hang up his holster and live a quiet life. But when corruption and murder threaten his friends, Kane is forced to do what he does best: face down danger at high noon, even if it means breaking every promise he made to himself. Director George Wagner builds the suspense slowly, showing Kane struggle with his reputation as a living legend. The town is both wary and hopeful. Can the famous gunfighter save them, or will he bring more bloodshed? The tension is thick as cane syrup as Brazos is drawn out, goaded by villains who mistake kindness for weakness. When the clock strikes 12, there's no backing out. Kane is in the middle of the street, the entire town watching as he confronts the bad men who've hijacked their peace. What makes this showdown sing is Scott's performance, a mix of regret, resolve, and a simmering rage that refuses to stay buried. The final moments are tense and swift. Shots ring out, justice is served, and Brazos Kane finally finds the peace he craved, not in isolation, but in doing what's right, one last time. Gunfighters is proof. The West is never done with you, and sometimes the only way out is to face the sun head on. The Canson, 1943. Bank robbers, corrupt power brokers, and a town on edge. The Canson has all the ingredients for a scorching high noon. Richard Dix's Marshall. John Bonnewell takes charge as a ruthless gang plans a heist for the one time of day nobody expects. Noon. Director George Archambaud amps up the suspense, with sun-bleached streets and nervous citizens dodging stray bullets. Bonnewell isn't just fast, he's smart, herding the gang into the open for a final confrontation. The standoff becomes a spectacle as townsfolk pick sides and chaos erupts. Bonnewell's brains and guts save the day, but not without cost. In the end, the Canson delivers everything you want from a Western showdown. Sharp action, clear stakes, and a reminder that sometimes justice is found when the sun's at its highest and the whole town is watching. Santa Fe Trail, 1940. High noon doesn't always mean bullets. Sometimes it's ideals that clash harder than any gunfight. Santa Fe Trail sets Errol Flynn's J.E.B. Stuart against Raymond Massey's John Brown in a showdown that's as much about ideology as it is about action. The West is changing, old loyalties are fraying, and the fate of a nation hangs in the balance. The climactic confrontation is staged beneath the relentless sun, both men surrounded by followers, each certain they're right. Director Michael Curtis turns the heat up, letting history and tension build until something's got to break. Flynn brings dashing energy to Stuart, but he's haunted by questions. Can violence ever really change the world? Massey's Brown is wild-eyed, zealous, impossible to ignore. The final standoff isn't a shootout, but a standoff of wills, with the entire town, and by extension America, caught in the crossfire. The showdown explodes in chaos, arrests, escape attempts, and finally, the confrontation that seals Brown's fate. Curtis never lets the pace slacken. Every shot and speech carries the weight of history. Santa Fe Trail proves that sometimes the most explosive high noon is the one where nobody walks away unchanged. In the end, the true cost isn't measured in bullets, but in what people are willing to sacrifice for their cause. Western Union, 1941. What happens when your best friend becomes your deadliest enemy? Under the noon sun, with progress and betrayal hanging in the air. Western Union is all about lines being drawn, not just on maps, but in the hearts of men. Vance Shaw, a.k.a. Randolph Scott, an ex-outlaw trying to go straight, finds himself on opposite sides of the law from his old pal Jack Slade, played by Barton McLean. The construction of the telegraph is bringing civilization, but old grudges die hard. Director Fritz Lang milks the tension, turning the vast plains into an arena for one of the tensest standoffs of the decade. The showdown isn't just a test of skill. It's about loyalty, regret, and the kind of betrayal that can only happen between friends. The noon sun turns every shadow into a threat, every movement into a question. Will Vance finally choose his new path, or get dragged down by his past? The climax is everything you want in a Western. Sharp dialogue, quick draws, and consequences that echo long after the gun smoke fades. Western Union isn't just about winning or losing. It's about what you're willing to stand for when the world is watching. By the end, lines are crossed, debts are paid, and the future of the West feels anything but certain. Belle Starr, 1941. When it comes to outlaws, few names stir up as much dust as Belle Starr. Played with unstoppable swagger by Gene Tierney, she's not content to wait for the men to settle things. She rides right into the fray, six-shooter ready and temper hotter than a branding iron. Belle Starr isn't just another Western about outlaws and lawmen. It's about one woman's refusal to let the world write her ending. And if that means a showdown at high noon, so be it. The tension in this film builds like a gathering storm. Belle's on the run, outsmarting lawmen and rivals at every turn, until the world finally corners her in a no-exit town. Director Irving Cummings draws out the suspense, making every moment in the midday sun feel like a dare. Will she surrender or go out guns blazing? Belle's enemies gather, betting the farm that she'll finally back down. But if they'd been paying attention, they'd know. Belle Starr never runs from a fight. The final showdown isn't just bullets and bravado. It's Belle, standing tall in the street, facing betrayal from all sides. Ex-lovers, old allies, and the law itself. The townsfolk watch, torn between fear and awe, as Tierney's Belle spits in the face of fate. The gunfire that erupts is chaotic and brutal, more brawl than ballet, and when the smoke clears, nothing is left but legend. In the end, Belle Starr loses the battle, but wins the myth. This is the high noon showdown for anyone who ever dared to rewrite the rules and go out their own way. The Sea of Grass, 1947. Not every showdown is about gunfire. Sometimes, it's years of heartbreak finally clashing at high noon. The Sea of Grass pairs Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn in a family saga simmering with resentment and ambition. Tracy's Colonel Jim Bruton rules the endless grasslands, but Hepburn's Ludi Cameron is just as determined, pushing back against his iron will. Director Elia Kazan crafts a tense, slow-burn drama where the final confrontation unfolds, not in a dusty street, but on wind-swept plains, with pride and compassion squaring off under the blazing sun. There's no shootout here, just an emotional reckoning as words become weapons, every line cutting deeper than any bullet. When it's over, the consequences are huge, families divided, fortunes lost, and futures left hanging. The Sea of Grass reminds us that the hardest battles are sometimes fought at home, with scars that last a lifetime. In the West, not every legend is built on bullets. Sometimes it's heartbreak that leaves the deepest mark. So, after all the smoke clears and the dust settles, which high noon showdown would you walk into? Gun drawn, heart pounding, fate hanging in the balance. The 1940s proved that showdowns aren't just about bullets. They're about pride, regret, love, and the courage to stand tall when the world is watching. If you think we missed your favorite, hit that comment box. And if you love these tales of sunlight and suspense, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Because the West never sleeps, and neither do legends.